Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here, and we are 12 weeks, 3 months in fact, through the 2024-25 NBA season, and essentially at the true halfway mark of the regular season. By the time you factor in the All-Star break, we're essentially there. January, February, March, April, we are not far away from things really starting to spice up, and time is flying. There's some genuinely great teams now floating around. The real contenders are starting to rear their head, and some of the players are really starting to make a stance on where they are right now. It's going to be interesting the back end of this month as we head towards that All-Star break, exactly who's going to step up, who's going to be healthy. A few teams have turned the corner, which is good to see, others falling by the wayside. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get into it. Let's get into my Week 12 review for the 2024-25 NBA season. The Atlanta Hawks are 1-1 record through the week, and just with form in the conference, they have actually fallen to 9th in the East through those 12 weeks. Got the win over Utah. Trae Young, their best player, consistently throughout the season. There have certainly been some standouts here. Jalen Johnson comes to mind, as does a Dyson Daniels. But Trae Young with a nice week. 22.5 points, 2 rebounds, 13.5 assists, 0.5 steals, 0.5 blocks on 2.5 turnovers. The ability for Atlanta to go much higher than sort of between that 7, 8, 9, 10 right now is going to start getting really, really tough. Paolo Banchero is back for Orlando. Milwaukee are making a run. We're seeing Indiana make a bit of a run. Detroit are on a run. And, of course, you factor in New York, Cleveland and Boston. It does make it a pretty tough run for them. But they've just got to stick fat. They're the ebb and flow of the conference right now. If they can stay to form, then at some point they're going to bounce back. Boston, they are still floating around that 2nd seed. They're being challenged a little bit in the 3rd seed there by the Knicks, but the Knicks just keep shooting themselves in the foot in little bits here and there and just finding it tough to stay consistent and competitive there. A 2-1 record, 2nd in the conference as I mentioned. Solid win against Denver and a cruisy win against New Orleans. Jason Tatum on the week, 27.3 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists to go, 0.7 steals and 1 block, 4.3 turnovers and sub 47, 48% shooting. Close to that 45 range this week, not characteristic of his efficiencies. Boston at the moment, you feel they probably are just cruising a little bit. There is some stuff that they will need to do. There's no doubt about it. They're not going to be able to get away with just cruising at the moment with the way the Knicks are playing, with the return of how Orlando's looking, Cleveland making a fair break on them, and of course Milwaukee just have that presence. But right now, they're sitting okay in the 2nd seed. They're likely going to try and turn things up as we head to February. The Brooklyn Nets, oh how the mighty have fallen. A 0-3 record, 12th in the conference, no wins for them this week. Nick Claxton still continues to be, well, the constant for this team, and realistically has been the constant of this team, well, for quite a number of years now. There was Jarrett Allen who was at centre, he's gone. You had the original Spencer Dinwiddie combination there with LeVert, gone. Obviously the KD, Harden, Kyrie saga, gone, and they're going through this rebuild here where there was Ben Simmons still, where there was still Cam Thomas, Schroeder now gone, Cam Johnson. Claxton, the constant, 12.7 points, 8 rebounds, 2.7 assists, or 1.3 steals and 2 blocks on 0.3 turnovers, has consistently been one of the better big men defenders in the league. The only issue is he's played on a franchise that's had far bigger stories than him and his consistent play. You would think he might be one of the key pieces, though, that'll move if Brooklyn go to do something serious. The Charlotte Hornets, in the case of LaMelo Ball, 1-1 record, 14th in the conference, did get a win over Phoenix, who, to say they're certainly walking on a knife's edge and have any consistency to the game right now would be a fair stretch. But LaMelo's had a really nice season when he's been available. 28.5 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, 3.5 steals on 0.5 blocks, 2 turnovers there. A nice week across those 2 games. The only gripe I have right now is to suggest that LaMelo Ball is, in my opinion, an all-star this year compared to guys who are contributing and getting teams up and about, contributing on winning teams, having more standout seasons, actually playing games and being on the floor. does gripe me a little bit. It gripes me even more to think that he's probably going to be a starter as a guard in the East. That worries me for a guy who has only played 2/3 of his team's games, and I think there's better options out there. The Bulls, an interesting case study, much like somewhat Charlotte a little bit. It's kind of strange the way they're playing. They've been more consistent throughout the year, there's no doubt about it, and this guy on screen's been on one of the better scoring tears over the last month. A 1-2 record over the week for the Bulls, 10th in the conference, got the win over Washington. Again, doesn't speak much, but Zach LaVine has been on a 30-piece tear this year. I saw something that if you add LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, a couple other guys as far as their 30-point games this year, he's actually got more of them than those guys combined, which really speaks of his scoring ability for the week. 33.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, 3.7 assists, limited defensive numbers, but limited turnovers there, so he is being effective on the offensive end. The only gripe, much like the LaMelo Ball situation here, I think LaVine is going to be a borderline all-star as well. And the only issue I have here is where has he been and where has the contributions been effective to his team? That has to count for something somewhere along the line. Now, here is a guy, and here is a situation where you can certainly understand all-star selection, consistent, quality play, helping lead his team to victories, and not just in the sense of being the second option, quite often stepping up and being the number one guy. Darius Garland, a big week for him. 2-1 record for the Cavaliers, first in the conference. They did get that win over that big battle against Oklahoma City and did defeat Toronto. Garland on the week, 26 points, 1.3 rebounds, 7.7 assists, 0.7 steals to go with 3 turnovers. I think that Darius Garland has more of a case as an all-star than the people that I've listed in this video, not named Jason Tatum. That's the level of play Darius Garland's been at. That's also the level that Cleveland's been operating, and I think that's something that has to be considered. How is the team operating? Where do they fit into the system? And that's a fair call, but I think Darius Garland has had a better year than LaMelo Ball, than Zach LaVine, than Trae Young. That's the level he's at. And here's another guy that should well and truly be over LaMelo Ball, and I can make a very good case that he has been very close to Jason Tatum as far as his production this year. A guy that's really turned it around and really helped his franchise. Detroit currently sit 8th in the conference. A 3-1 record on the week, got wins over Brooklyn, Toronto, and New York. Cade Cunningham, 25.8 points, 5.8 rebounds, 8.5 assists, 4.5 turnovers. That is the area he does creep into quite a bit, but it's something he has matured with this season and improved upon. 1.5 steals, 0.8 blocks. Cade Cunningham should be the starting point guard in the East. Simple. Done, cut, finished, all good. People aren't going to like the fact that I'm going to mention Tyrese Halliburton here. I think he's had a really good month. I think it's really improved his case, thus the reason the paces have increased. And I think someone like Donovan Mitchell certainly should get more consideration than some of the other guys I've mentioned in this video. But Cade, he's flying. He's on the up. Now, the irony is that when we get to the Indiana Pacers, I'm not talking about Tyrese Halliburton this week. I am talking about Pascal Siakam. He's had a really nice week, and it's really hard for me to go past him in his production there. It's just, consistent, ultimately. 3-0 record for the Pacers. They've now jumped up into 5th and really challenging the Orlando Magic for that top 4. So they've started to really turn that corner a little bit back to what we saw. Siakam on the week, 23 points, 8 rebounds, 1.7 assists to go with 0.7 steals, 0.7 blocks on 1.3 turnovers. It is interesting to note that the Pacers haven't done anything significant in my opinion. They've started playing some more consistent basketball, but I don't think there's been anything that's really stepped out. Of course, we've spoken about in the last couple of seasons about the depth on their bench. Yep, they're producing, but their stars haven't done anything too dramatic beyond a Tyrese Halliburton. So are things clicking for the Pacers? Are things unfolding in the East? Interesting to see how it goes moving forward. The interesting case of the Miami Heat continues. And despite everything that's going on with them right now, a 3-1 record on the week, and they sit 7th in the Eastern Conference. Wins against Golden State, Utah, and Portland. Again, you can weigh into that how you wish, considering the way that those respective teams have been playing. But it's hard to deny the fact that the Heat are just starting to get on with the business now, despite the Tyler Hero conversations, the Bam Adebayo conversations, and, of course, particularly the Jimmy Butler conversations. For me, Hero, he's an all-star. I think Bam's an all-star as well. I'm happy to get my hands up in the air. I think Tyler Hero's more of an all-star than a LaMelo Ball. Controversial, but it's just the level I think he's been at. 25.3 points, 7.8 rebounds, 5 assists to go, 0.5 steals, 0.3 blocks on 0.8 turnovers. The question right now is, what are the Heat going to do with Jimmy Butler? He's clearly not going to be returning after that suspension. He's out and out told them now face-to-face he wants out. What do you get for him? Are you looking for pieces short-term? Are you looking for a big piece long-term? Contract's a huge factor in this one. The Milwaukee Bucks, who earlier, certainly in the last 3 weeks or within the last 3-4 weeks, looked like they were going to be a team that was certainly going to push towards that top 3 and really make a push. The conference is starting to balance itself out once again, and the Bucks are probably falling into where they need to be, and that's around that 6th spot in the conference. 2-1 record, defeated San Antonio and Orlando. Really strong performances by Giannis Antetokounmpo in both of those games, and a really strong performance on the week for him. 30 points, 14.3 rebounds, 4.7 assists, to go with 1 steal and 1.3 blocks on 3.7 turnovers. Going to be interesting for the Bucks. This is where it's going to be crucial for them defensively to really lock in to try and get back to where they need to be. They've got one of, if not the best scorer in the league right now in Giannis. You've got a really nice supporting cast around him, particularly for Dame as a second option, and we're seeing the consistency out of Portis and Lopez. If the rest of the pieces around them can perform, the Bucks can start to lift. If that doesn't happen, this is where we're going to see them. The New York Knicks, a team that is still sitting around that top 3 in the East, but the Orlando Magic, you have to feel, are on their way very, very soon. Paolo Banchero is back, and it's going to be interesting to see exactly how they perform. And we'll get to the Knicks we'll get to the Magic in a second, but that will put pressure on the Knicks, who have sort of fluctuated up and down over the last couple of weeks. 2-2 record for them, 3rd in the conference, defeated Toronto and Milwaukee. But I can say unequivocally that Karl-Anthony Towns has really started to make a jump, and he's really pushing his case as the All-NBA first-team member. Going to be tough when you've only got 3 spots for forwards and centres. He might make the second team on that default there, but a big week. 26.5 points, 13.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.5 blocks on 3.3 turnovers. Going to be really interesting to see how this continues to pan out. The potential burnout as well. I believe 5 Knicks are in the top 10 minutes played this year. No other team has 5 in the top 75. The Orlando Magic, we've touched on them briefly throughout, but they're going to start looking a little bit better than they were over the last couple of weeks, which says a lot because they've looked all right considering they've had nothing essentially but role players. A 1-2 record this week with Banchero coming back into the team, so you're obviously going to adjust for the chemistry there, but they're still 4th in the conference. They've weighted this one really well, particularly with the gap after Franz injured himself. Defeated Philadelphia, and Karl-Anthony a real standout here. 19 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 2 steals and a block a game, less than 3 turnovers. These are the kind of performances that we've seen consistently out of Orlando and the players that are on this roster for a number of weeks now. They're guys that can step up, step out, and essentially just proving that, hey, if there's contract money out there and people want me, I can go there and get that bag. There's no issues there. I can see a Karl-Anthony getting a really nice extension. Someone like a Suggs getting an extension, to an extent of a Batazzi as well. But I think Orlando, with health and chemistry, they're going to start getting back into the mix really, really soon. For Philadelphia, with all this movement in the conference, it's not going to bode well for them. And I say that because we've consistently seen that when there's any fluctuations in the conference this year, when there's any high performances or teams riding a wave, the one team that doesn't seem to catch that is Philadelphia. And it comes down to the fact that they're a little bit older, they're certainly a lot slower, they're injury prone, and the young guys that they've got to rely upon, you know, they don't have any help around them, and that's due to the health of their stars. A 1-2 record on the week for Philly, 11th in the conference, defeated Washington. Tyrese Maxey, their standout player, once again, 29.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, 7.7 assists to go with 2 steals and 2.7 blocks. The other news coming out of Philadelphia this week, Jared McCain confirmed out for the rest of the season. Now, for Philly, that's going to be a management thing, and that's going to be an absolute test of what their strength and conditioning staff can do, because you've got a proven track record of injuries. You've got a young guy who showed promise. Can you manage that? Can you turn it around? Can you get him back to health? The Toronto Raptors, a 1-3 record on the week, and I don't think we're going to see much more fluctuation out of them. This is going to be a matter of trying to really build something now with Barnes and Barrett and a couple of pieces they've got up there. in the North. 1-3 record, as I mentioned, 13th in the conference, defeated Golden State. Make of that as you wish. But I'm liking the two-way play once again of Scotty Barnes. This is why he was an all-star. This is why he was a Rookie of the Year, and he's arguably been the best player of his draft. 20.3 points, 8.8 rebounds, 5.5 assists to go, 1.8 steals and 2 blocks on 2 turnovers. If this guy was playing anywhere other than Toronto, particularly on the East Coast right now, people would be raving about his play and the level of play that he's had through his career. The issue is he's been tied away up in Toronto. He hasn't been the talking point. He's been the rookie who's stuck fat, who's been consistent. Hasn't dealt with the trades, hasn't dealt with any pressure, and was named an all-star, and he deserved it. We'll see how this unfolds for Toronto. Happy to keep this one short and sweet. The worst team in the NBA played 5 games and didn't win any of them. 15th in the conference. Jared Butler, their best player. I'll let you make of that as you wish. 14.2 points, 2.8 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 0.4 steals, 0.6 blocks on 1.4 turnovers. You're only as good as your leaders and your best players. And it's alright when Poole and Kuzma want to turn up and play, but when they don't, it's bad, and the other guys, they're not great. In the West, we will go to Dallas, who are still trying to push a little bit here and showing why their core was just as important as their senior leaders heading into the finals last year. 5th in the conference, 2-1 record, defeated the Lakers and the Blazers. Spencer Dinwiddie continuing to produce 17.3 points, 5 rebounds, 7.7 assists to go, 1 steal and 1.7 turnovers. Kyrie still out of the side. Luka officially cannot compete for any NBA awards. Someone said this is like the 5th season he's come in as a favourite. Hasn't delivered. A bit of conversation around his numbers versus Jokic. The usual stuff that you can expect. But the key here for Dallas is now doing essentially what Orlando has done this year. You've won games, you've been in contention, you're at the top of the conference. Now it's time to test your core guys to see where they are. Can they step up or do they step down and do they get out of the way? If Dallas are going to maintain 500 weeks, 2-1 weeks, 1-1 weeks, they're going to be okay. It's then how they mesh when their stars return. You're not going to believe it, but all of a sudden someone's gotten out of Los Angeles, gotten away from the fact that being a scapegoat, into a system that allows them to play the way they play, and they're thriving. One of the feel-good stories of the year, Russell Westbrook with the Denver Nuggets. Another solid week for him, flirting with that triple-double. In fact, back to what he was when he was a second option, playing with Kevin Durant. Russell Westbrook in a 3-1 record for Denver. They're still top 4 in the conference, got wins over the Clippers, the Nets, and the Mavs. Westbrook, 22.8 points, 9 rebounds, 7.8 assists to go with 0.8 steals and 1 block. 4.3 turnovers. We know Russ turns it over. We also know Russ is a high usage player. Russell Westbrook is still the only MVP in league history that has been told to adapt to a team and a system rather than the other way around. People wondered why Russell Westbrook wasn't able to produce and get results because he was not put into a domain. Guess what? He's in a system with Denver. He can play his way. He's getting results. Speaks absolute volumes from previous situations. I don't have very much to say about the Golden State Warriors at the moment. And I think the fact that Trace Jackson Davis is their player of the week with those numbers, having been the one who turned up consistently the most, speaks more volumes than anything I could say. Ironically, their only win this week came against a red-hot Detroit team, but they still sit 12th in the conference. Jackson Davis, 11.3 points, 8.3 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.5 blocks, and a turnover. That's not a criticism of Jackson Davis there right now. I've got no issues with Jackson Davis. I like the way he goes about his play. He's another young guy that's trying to get into this Warriors system. But there really has to be some accountability right now with their leaders. Buddy Hield started hot, and now it's as if you've put him in an ice bath. Steph Curry trying to produce, but let's be honest, he's not producing where he needs to be. And Draymond Green showing flashes at best. Kuminga and Wiggins are the guys they need to start committing through right now. That's when this team has looked at its best this year. When they go away from it, it's not quite the same. I'll let you do the math. Now, for something a little bit more positive, as a Houston fan, I enjoy the fact that we're a 3-0 record. We're second in the conference overall, 3-0 on the week, undefeated on the week. And here's a guy that I'm really, really happy with because he's managed to survive all the terrible cultural crap that was going on with this team to thrive and survive a heap in this system. 32.7 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 0.3 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. He is the perfect sidekick, second option, potential number one option that this team needed. And I'm going to put him out there once again, a guy who deserves to be an all-star a hell of a lot more than LaMelo Ball. And a lot of people aren't going to like that. But here's the thing. I'm sitting here watching teams. I'm covering the league. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care what you see from a one-team perspective. I'm watching everybody. I'm seeing everybody. With the contributions that Jalen Green's making, with a top 2 team, really not out of the realm for them to have 2 All-Stars. Speaking of teams that potentially could have 2 All-Stars, I think the Clippers have played well enough at times to show that they have 3 All-Stars. Norman Powell being the absolute leader of those. A 1-1 week for the Clippers, and of course a shout out to both Los Angeles teams with everything that's happening there with the wildfires. Cannot be easy as players, cannot be easy as an organisation, and an absolute slap in the face to anybody who decides to criticise these people to take, their personal lives first in this situation. 6 in the conference, got a win over Miami. Norman Powell continuing to produce 29.5 points, 5 rebounds, and an assist on 1.5 steals a game. That's a 2-game spread. No turnovers in that time. A really efficient amount of numbers. Norman Powell, the leading all-star here for the Clippers. James Harden's had a really nice year. Again, I think his true position should have been point guard for most of his career. He's proven that multiple times. He's proven it again this year. And Zubac, again, a guy who's a borderline all-star, really competing at the center position. A nice year so far for the Clippers. They've just got to maintain it. To the Lakers, same again. Shout out to the people of Los Angeles dealing with the horrid conditions there with the wildfires. And of course, JJ Redick dealing with a fair bit there as well. Unfortunately for the Lakers, 0-2 weeks, 7th in the conference, didn't get a win. Anthony Davis trying to step up where he can. 25.5 points, 12.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks on 2 turnovers. The conversation that's happening right now around the Lakers is that Bradley Beal has put his hand up, and Bradley Beal has said, I am happy to waive my trade clause to Los Angeles. The only issue there is Phoenix are not willing to do a 3-way trade, particularly with the fact that it would involve Beal, it would involve Butler, and you're likely considering a Hashimura and Austin Reeves getting out of that package there as well. I don't know what the Lakers are going to do. They're going to stay around that playing bubble, I think. Again, we're seeing the fluctuation in the respective conferences, but some teams are starting to gel when the Lakers are starting to dip. The Memphis Grizzlies, a 1-2 record on the week for them, but they still maintain position third in the Western Conference. Got a win over Minnesota, which is ironic because somehow Minnesota have started to really flick the switch and are playing some better basketball. They're starting to move up the conference themselves. Again, a team that is going to start costing other teams their spots when they're out of form simply because they're moving. Jaren Jackson Jr., again, continues to be an all-defensive candidate, and I think it's really, really tough right now to suggest that he is not all-NBA first-team defense. That's the level that he's playing at. I think you're going to see a real argument for it. 23.7 points, 6 rebounds, 2.7 assists. Didn't have to shoulder as much of a load this week, although a couple of step-ups here and there would have helped. 2 steals, 2.3 blocks. We've been talking consistently about these numbers all season with Jaren Jackson Jr., and you've only got to watch it. His two-sided play, not his two-way play, his two-sided play to go with 2.3 turnovers. He dominates defensively with the left. He dominates defensively with the right. If he's guarding you, you're going to have a bad night. And as we spoke about there for Memphis, it's Minnesota they got the win against. But the Timberwolves with a really nice week. 3-1 record, 8th in the conference. And I barely got their list of wins onto the page there. New Orleans, Orlando and Washington, 2 of the 3 worst teams in the league, and a team that's bouncing back with chemistry. So was it necessarily the greatest week for them? I'll let you be the judge. But you can only beat what's in front of you, and you've got to take your opportunities. Those 3 wins compared to some teams not winning games drastically changes the seeds right now in any conference. Edwards, a nice week. 27.3 points, 5.8 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 2 steals, 0.3 blocks, 4.8 turnovers. His usage rate has gone up, but we're seeing a bit more aggression out of Anthony Edwards in the last couple of weeks. They say players don't read into the media, they don't listen to the media, they don't listen to the feedback, but this guy's gone from shooting a lot of jump shots right now to not necessarily shooting a lot of jump shots and attacking the rim. We're seeing more results out of it for Minnesota. Over to New Orleans and their recruit of the offseason, Dejounte Murray turning the clock back a little bit there to his all-defensive level days, not only as a rookie, but certainly when he was leading the league in steals and looked like the guy that the Spurs could probably do a little bit with, and the guy I think Atlanta wanted to commit to and weren't able to. It's sort of working out for all parties. Unfortunately for the Pelicans, they are in a dire situation. They're the worst team in the West, a 1-3 record, ironically, got a win over Philadelphia. But Dejounte Murray, 23 points, 6 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 2.5 steals and 0.5 blocks. It was around this time last year, if you will recall, that this is when there was a few issues in Atlanta. Trae Young wasn't, necessarily buying into the system. Jalen Johnson was having his moments. Your Hunters and alike were contributing. But this is where Dejounte Murray really had to step up and started to produce and really put Atlanta back into contention in the play-in tournament. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be able to do that here with New Orleans. Clearly, their season's gone. But it's interesting that right about now is usually when Dejounte Murray really starts turning up the heat. The Oklahoma City Thunder, huge win streak snapped in their big game against Cleveland as Cleveland got the win, but there's no doubt in my mind that they still remain the team in the West right now. 2-1 record, defeated New York, defeated Washington. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just continues to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and he actually had a pretty down week offensively, particularly from an efficiency standpoint. You're going to see these numbers. These were bulk numbers, and it's fair to call that out. This is a guy who put up a lot of shots and got a lot of points this week. 32.3 points, 5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 2.3 steals and a block on 3.3 turnovers. The guy's still producing. He's still doing it efficiently, and he's still doing it on both ends of the floor. That has to be factored in. That has to be accounted for. It has to be respected. They lose that matchup against Cleveland. We're talking about a game in January. Let's worry about how they're looking in key matchups in late March, early April, and how they suit up in the first round of the playoffs. That'll tell us a lot more. This is probably going to be a controversial statement because, well, I'm a Devin Booker fan. But I think Devin Booker is more of an all-star than LaMelo Ball this year. The chances of it happening over there in the West right now is really, really tough. But I think he's played well enough, despite the fact that Phoenix have had a really backwards year. 3-1 record, 10th in the conference. He had a really nice week. Defeated Atlanta, Utah, and Charlotte. A genuine mixed bag based on their form and where they sit. But certainly lower half of their respective conferences, no doubt about that. Booker on the week, 30.8 points, 4.8 rebounds, 8.5 assists to go, 1.5 steals, and 2.3 turnovers. It's fair to say that Devin Booker certainly has thrived in situations and had better results overall for his career when he's played next to better players. But I also want to point out that there isn't a player in league history that hasn't had better results and better opportunities and better success when they've not played with better players. That's just a fact. So if that's something that we're going to hold against a Devin Booker or hold against other players, I want you to be consistent with that right across the board. The Portland Trail Blazers, a 1-2 record for them. 13th in the conference. Got a win over New Orleans, as you would expect. Unless they were going to be playing Utah and unless they were going to be playing Washington, I wouldn't have expected them to be having a 3-0 record. Anthony Simons continues to try and step up where he can. 22.3 points, 3.7 rebounds, 4 assists, 0.7 steals, and 1 turnover. My ultimate question here for the Blazers, and I know he's not going to accept it, but it depends how you're thinking from a Miami standpoint. Do you seriously look at how Jimmy Butler has blown up that franchise and take him on? Absolutely not. But from a Miami standpoint, I would be wanting to really look at a Portland, considering some of the pieces that they have that can be instant glue guys into a team like Miami that aren't going to disrupt their system. I don't like the idea that you trade it down because I think Portland need to back themselves in, but I think something Blazers really have to be considerate of, considering the pieces they have on this roster. The Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings are on a run right now after they sacked their coach. 2-0 record, they've now jumped up to 9th. They're consistently been around 500, but you've only got to look at the depth in the conference. Huge week for Domantas Sabonis, 2-game spread, but 22.5 points, 21.5 rebounds, and 5.5 assists. People don't like Domantas Sabonis as a player, and it's quite simple. It's the Tim Duncan effect. There's nothing flashy about the way Sabonis goes about his game. He just goes about his game. He gets on the floor, he scores points, he facilitates where he can, he grabs rebounds. That's what he's there to do. He does it really well. Sabonis consistently has been a top 3 center in this league for the better part of 4 or 5 years, but he doesn't get the due respect. Number one, he's competing with Nikola Jokic. He plays a similar role, and Joel Embiid has taken a lot of media hype. You remove all of that, and you look at the way Sabonis plays his role in his system, he is as effective as any player on his night. Interesting week for the Spurs, who got a win against the Lakers, a nice consistent win for the Lakers. Of course, the only highlight that you would know about it was a layup over Wembanyama, but they're not going to talk about the 26-point difference almost that was the final margin. Spurs 11th in the conference, and again, they're a victim of teams that are playing really well when they're not playing well, and that ultimately is going to change the outlook for them. Wemby, still a consistent week defensively, not quite there offensively, but it's clear right now the league is switching on to the production that he's producing. 16.5 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists across the 2 games, 2.5 steals, 2.5 blocks on 2 turnovers. I don't think the Spurs are too worried. If the Spurs can be in a playing spot this year, that's certainly better than they were 20 wins last year. It's then the following season where they have to step up. It's going to be crucial, though, as they get long in the tooth. We're getting to the All-Star break. You're really wanting that rest. But on the other side of it, you need to be prepared to fire up and get ready to go. It's a long season. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Can the Spurs make the finishing line? And finally, over to Utah. 14th in the conference. They got a win over Brooklyn this week, and that was as discombobulated as, well, any win that you've ever seen. An 8-court violation coming over the timeline there for them. Managed to see them secure it in OT, but it goes well and truly now beyond a poor performance when you look at the chemistry and the issues that are potentially inside this team. 14th in the conference, Colin Sexton, their player of the week. 22 points, 3 rebounds, 4.3 assists to go with 0.5 steals and 0.3 blocks on 1.3 turnovers. I don't know for Utah right now. I thought it was going to be a performance thing, but with some of the chemistry issues that have certainly been evident over the last week or so, it makes a lot more sense exactly what's happening. We'll see how it continues to unfold. Jordan Clarkson still on the bench, still not engaged. Plenty of guys there that are clearly getting a paycheck. Not a healthy situation there for the Jazz. Not a healthy situation for coaching and management either. And that is a wrap on my Week 12 review for the 2024-25 NBA season. A few different opinions in there about players and their performance, a few different opinions about teams, but I think people are really starting to see just how this conference stuff on both sides is working out. You've got some teams whose performance is going to drive them up. You've got other teams whose performance, regardless, is probably going to drive them down just because of the other factors around them. We've got some star players returning. We've got some other guys turning up the heat. And we're going into a really interesting time, the back end of January, heading into the All-Star break. How will teams fare moving into it? How will teams come out of the All-Star break? We are dead set at the halfway part of the season. Anyway, guys, that's been me with my review for Week 12 of the 24-25 NBA season. I'm out.